and gentlemen, welcome to Eat, Sleep, Suplex, Retweet.
Welcome everyone to Eat, Sleep, Suplex, Retweet, and this is yet another Ross's Retro Review. I'm Ross, reviewing the retro of No Way Out 2000. Try saying that when you're drunk. No Way Out 2000, as I mentioned, pay-per-view we're going to be reviewing today. It takes place on February 27th, 2000 from the Hartford City Centre in Hartford, Connecticut, right in WWF territory. On a show that features a Hell in a Cell match, I'm joined by a man who's made my life a living hell for many a year, Scott McLeod.
I know your game. I know why you brought me on with this show. We'll get to it later on, but I know why you brought me. I know you're up to.
Okay, anyway, so before we start, just the usual housekeeping. At Suplex Retweet, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, you can find us there. Eat Sleep Suplex Retweet community on Facebook if you want to have a gab up later about all things wrestling. Previews, reviews and interviews on our free feed on Spotify, Anchor, iTunes and all Android podcasting sites. But also just suplexretweet.com. That's all. If you can't remember any of that, just suplexretweet.com. You'll find links to our shows, you'll find bios on our team, you'll find articles, you'll find news on upcoming shows, so much more. So, should we just jump right into this?
Why not?
So, the main event of this show, Cactus Jack Mick Foley is putting his career on the line against Triple H. Mm-hmm. And as such, the entrance ramp is just a sort of steel cage entranceway. And it's such a... It's quite simple, mm-hmm. yet quite efficient. It's the glory days of sets this era, you know. It just brings so much to the product, as we've seen recently with Raw and SmackDown, recently re-getting those new sets. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I do, like many fans, long for the days of like sets that were different for each show. You just use the same old set. Like AEW's been doing it for the pay-per-views. They make small changes to how it looks on Dynamite, so really look forward to that. And also, like you said, the Cactus Jack Triple H match takes centre stage. Like you got the stage and also the intro package. Usually they'll like it's a No Mercy, like who will face No Mercy or Unforgiven, who won't be forgiven tonight. So you figured there'd be like cram a bunch of there'll be no way out for these people, but no, the whole thing is about Cactus Jack and putting over how dangerous Cactus Jack can be.
Mm-hmm. So we obviously seen a wee bit of that at the Royal Rumble. Mm-hmm. He took Triple H to his limit, but Triple H still walked away, but didn't leave the arena on his own accord. Cactus Jack attacked him after it. So, speaking of continuing on for the Royal Rumble, we're continuing the rise of Kurt Angle. So, at the Royal Rumble, we've seen him destroyed by Taz in about 3 minutes. However, I believe it's the next Raw.
I think so.
He wins the European title from Val Venus, and he's currently the European champion. This contest against Chris Jericho, with China in his corner, is for Chris Jericho's Intercontinental title. We saw what hopefully was the end of the Jericho-China feud, you know, to determine an undisputed Intercontinental champion at the Royal Rumble, you know, featuring everyone's favourite superstar Hardcore Holly. But no, China's still there, floating about. It's weird because Kurt Angle comes out, he riles up the crowd with his usual, you know, your team's crap, this place sucks, I'm better than you, and then China comes out and gets a full intro, a full entrance, pyro and everything, not being in the match. She's Jericho's manager and it's just not a good thing.
I know, I mean, the whole European title on Raw, like you said about the Royal Rumble, Val Venus European champion doesn't come out with the belt. No, very little mention of it, and then he loses it on Raw. He's not on this show. I don't even know if we see him at Mania 2000. It's just showing like the likes of him and D'Lo Brown were big in like 98, 99. Slowly been pushed aside for the likes of Angle, Jericho, Benoit, and that we will see later on. But you know, I get what you say about the China thing, because it's one of the things. It's only when you watch it back you realise, well, that went on for this long. But I don't know if they knew how to really book China, because you know they're not allowed to treat her like a woman. They can't treat her like a man. They can't treat her like they know her. So what really do you do with her?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do with her? you mentioned as well, we will touch on it because it is actually a central point of the tag title match that follows this, about the old going into the new. And me and Nathan actually discussed on the previous show when reviewing the Royal Rumble. You see the Royal Rumble itself, there's so many people that by round about July time, which was actually when I first got into wrestling, July 2000, they're not here. These are just guys you see, you know, when you go to your mate's house and SmackDown 2 is put on, you're like, who's Ken Shamrock? Who's the big boss man? So, but yeah, Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho, two of the newer superstars, who, ironically, in a year's time, will be, you know, focal points on every basically pay-per-view card. So Jericho makes his entrance. He gets a full entrance as well, because if China gets one, he has to get one.
You know, you can expect that for the Intercontinental Champion.
So Jericho runs down Kirk Angel and says he might not leave with the title, but he'll still leave one bad mama jamma.
That's a dated reference for you.
It is a very dated reference. It's two of the best of all time. It's a back and forward match. It's one of those matches, it's good, but there's not, other than the finish really, there's not like any big spots to talk about. It's one of those matches you can watch, it's easy watching, it's not terrible.
Yeah.
But there's nothing there that's like, oh my god, that happened.
I know, I think they're both really just developing, because Angle, as much as people say how he adapted to it, he, up until a few months before this, had been wrestling the occasional dark match and losing to the likes of Meat and Stevie Richards apparently. And so he's still adapting from the world of amateur wrestling to professional wrestling, and Jericho has stated in his books how he struggled. He didn't realise that the style in WAF was different from WCW, so he's still developing. And one of the oddest things about this match I thought was Angle working over Jericho's arm, likely setting up for that, you know, famous arm submission, the ankle lock. Like,
he does break out an armbar actually at one point, but we'll just talk about the finish because there's not much really else to talk about. So the match spills out to the outside. Hebner's dealing with Kurt Angle. Sorry, Hebner's it's Tim White. It's Tim White. Sorry, Tim White is dealing. Jesus Christ, guys, we did literally just watch this as well. Tim White is dealing with Chris Jericho, and Kurt Angle begins to square up with China. Jericho then punches Kurt Angle, who knocks into China, who hits the steel steps. This is China, who's rattled through the men's division, but all of a sudden, because she's a female manager, she's been hit by a set of steps, she's down injured. The match spills back into the ring as the referee's checking on China. The Intercontinental title has been sneaked into the ring by Kurt Angle. Jericho goes for a lion salt. Angle gets the title up and hits the title off of Jericho's face. 1, 2, 3 for the win. It's a good match, good ending, but it is one of those ones that is kind of hard to talk about anything else other than just how bad the China thing is.
Yeah. It seems to be the further China gets away from the likes of Triple H and the kind of the further she gets from Triple H, the less dominant she becomes and the less protected she is. She's basically out on her own. She's not being seen as the most dominant woman in the company at this point. And I did enjoy the finish. It was a smart finish, the whole sneaking the belt and Jericho not noticing anything off it. And it's funny about this match that you wouldn't see a match like this today, in that there's two guys who are champions, but only one of the guys' title's on the line. Because like we see at WrestleMania, both belts on the line, but it's just moved like, oh yeah, I've got a belt, but I also want that belt as well.
Yeah, I think the only time we've seen anything similar to it is when Roman Reigns, as US champ, went after the Universal champ Kevin Owens, or when Cody Rhodes had a weird feud with Randy Orton but didn't put the Intercontinental title on the line, as if Randy Orton was just like, yeah, I really don't want that belt.
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Yeah, I'm kind of above that at the minute. So after the match, El Hebner and Tim White start discussing with each other. China's in both their ears. I mean, this is why we need VAR and the World Wrestling Federation.
What the fuck was buddy Tim White v Earl Hebner at WrestleMania 2000?
Yeah, we'll get more into that later, as they have a big moment to play in the match that determines the number one contender, if you can believe that. So we're backstage with the Dudley Boys. They say that they're going to win the tag titles tonight, and they have 2 words for DX, 3D. Technically that's a letter and a number, but you know, please yourself.
At least they're not stuttering anymore.
Yeah, something as well. Can people stop trying to copy the Outlaws? Because the Outlaws, Billy Gunn has this amazing, like, Greek god look, and Road Dogg is just so good on the mic. We've seen it at the Royal Rumble, APA, 2 words for you, ass kicking. And it just doesn't work, it's not cool. Like, Farouk and Bradshaw are not cool, the Dudley Boys are not that type of cool. It's just, it's completely stupid. And as you mentioned, Scott, earlier on, this is another match that feels like a changing of the guard, because it's the New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, WWE Tag Team Champions, against the Dudley Boys. New Age Outlaws are very much a 90s team, whereas Dudleys would go on to be like the innovators of the 2000 plus tag wrestling scene.
Yeah, because when you think of 2000, you think the Dudleys and 2 teams will see later on, Edge and Christian and the Hardys, whereas the Outlaws, I think, when they were tag champs, the reason they were tag champs so many times is more often than not when they lose it, it'd be to some mismatch team of 2 singles like Undertaker and Stone Cold, or Kane and Mankind, or some random group like that, so they weren't many of actual tag teams. And it does seem weird because I forgot that this match actually happened, because it doesn't seem like something that would happen because parts of the Attitude Era, because I think Unforgiven in 99, Edge and Christian fought the Outlaws for the titles just after the Outlaws got back together after some time apart, and again it's another match I wouldn't have thought was a thing because it seems like decades apart because they're from different parts of the era.
Yeah, it's weird how certain things can feel like ancient history. Like because I watched mid 2000 onwards, 2000 to 2001 doesn't seem that far to me, whereas 2000 to 99 feels like a decade, because I didn't watch that, so there was so much there. And as you said, there was very few tag teams in like the early days of the Attitude Era that were worthwhile. You know, you had your likes of Mean Street Posse and Headbangers, and you know, the Corporation always had like, you know, Shamrock and Bossman, or Bossman and Test, you know what I mean, people like that. But this match as well, it plants the seed for the triple threat match at WrestleMania, the triple threat ladder match between the Hardys, the Dudleys and Edge and Christian, and also plants the seed for Billy Gunn to be kicked out of D-Generation X.
Don't start crying, Russ, we've already used all the tissues.
That sounds horrible.
yeah. It's the way you're getting upset about Billy.
So, match is about 5 minutes long. Finish sees Bubba Ray Dudley take a pipe to Billy Gunn's shoulder on the outside, and with no one to help Road Dogg, they hit him with a 3D for the win. After the match, we see a bit of dissension. Billy tries to tell Road Dogg that, you know, I took a shot to, you know, the shoulder. Road Dogg just ignores him and leaves. I think it's a few weeks later we see Billy Gunn officially kicked out of DX. He had a neck problem and he needed some time to recuperate. And for as much as, you know, certain people, Stephen, slag Billy Gunn on this podcast, you soon seen his value when Road Dogg was teaming with X-Pac.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Like, I think this is the last time on pay-per-view the Outlaws ever teamed together until there'd been that random return late 2013, early 2014. So it's like, it's the end of the year almost for like a while, and the match was weirdly short. I didn't realise it was only about 5 minutes, but it's one of those things where I think they realise like Billy's injury and also the Outlaws are kinda, they don't fit in the division at the moment. The case of just, let's just get the belts off of them. The Dudleys are kind of or one of our new guys now. Just move it on the side and let's rebuild this division with these new teams.
Are you ready for this next match?
Oh yes.
So next up, a wrestling mat classic. Mark Henry versus Viscera.
Oh.
So this is during the whole Mae Young is Pregger storyline.
Classic.
Yes, so on the Go Home Raw, Viscera splashes Mae Young, so on the heat before the pay-per-view, Mark Henry attacks him. See, to be honest, the match is about 3 minutes. I'm just going to tell you now, Mark Henry wins it. It's not much to talk about. We're just going to kind of talk about the gimmicks these guys had, because they had a plethora of gimmicks, and it's a shame that these guys both had like dominant heel runs, and they also had like love machine personas. This is like peak sexual chocolate here, and they never ran parallel to each other. They could have been. They could. I've actually got a name for the team.
Do tell.
So they're 2 pieces of sexual chocolate.
Oh, here we go.
So we're going to call them the selection box. kick your ass, shag your missus, the selection box way. And yeah, just to remind you, this is a feud over a pregnant 77-year-old woman.
I know.
Much to add to this?
I don't know, just Viscera just splashes Mae Young while she's pregnant just because, and somehow they said, oh, she's still pregnant, seems the baby's fine, like she was the offspring of Henry, just how strong that is.
Yeah, there's a moment JR says, yeah, the baby's holding on, and King goes, what, to let a wrinkle or something?
I know, I remember one of the best lines I ever heard Jada Waller say about Mae Young. It's not on this show, I can't remember where it was, I think it might have been a random SmackDown, but he said, Mae Young's birthday suit needs an iron. But you know, only complaint I have is we didn't get enough Viscera on this show. You know, I need more Viscera in my life.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, justice for Gary Kernan. So we then get two backstage segments. We see Billy Gunn getting medical attention. He's holding on to his shoulder. He's complaining about how much it hurts. He doesn't let the doctor see him because it's too sore. Really amping up this shoulder injury just to obviously get him off TV. We then see Jericho say that he has no issue with China. Why does he have an issue with China? Because she didn't do anything. But who did do something was Kirk Angel, and he's going to go after him. We see it throughout the night, and there is one big payoff, but there is bits throughout the night where Kurt Angle is just sort of celebrating with the fans. He's got both titles, and he's like, yes, you're welcome, you're welcome.
It did seem like Angle treated almost every other victory like he'd won a gold medal again, just how over the top he was. And I just love the idea of Road Dogg just leaving Billy Gunn after he got injured. Like, how selfish of you getting hit by a pipe.
I know, it is that sort of thing. Like, I know you've got to get Road Dogg off, Billy Gunn off TV, but considering the Outlaws went through thick and thin, broke up and got back together, you think in the Attitude Era where so many things happen, they'd maybe understand that, yeah, actually weapon attacks happen.
You know, they were off and on, and then years later, after years of being apart, they got back together, and the Robin and Ted of the tag team division.
So, up next, number one contenders match, the Hardys with Terry and the APA, for reasons we'll find out later, will take on Edge and Christian. So the Dudley Boys have just won the tag titles we talked about. This has determined the number one contender for the tag titles at WrestleMania. So the Hardys come out with the skeleton of Terry Runnels,
Jesus Christ.
who has hired the poor man's purge, the APA, to protect her from the Dudleys. She was off telly briefly because this is also running parallel to, as we'll talk on Backlash, Judgment Day and King of the Ring retro reviews, this is Bubba Dudley's obsession with putting women through tables. Terry was one of the women who's been put through the tables, and she said she's hired the APA to protect her from the Dudleys. So before I knew the finish of this match, I just put in my notes, surely you help your team win and then hire the APA to defend you when they face the Dudleys.
Yeah.
That would have made sense.
I've got a few things to say here. A lot of them revolve around Terry Runnels here.
Okay.
First of all, Jesus, you could play her bloody ribcage like a xylophone. How skinny is this woman? And also, her freaking top went a bit to about halfway and barely covered anything. Like,
I know. Poor Jerry Lawler, the walking erection of the Attitude Era.
I mean, if Channel 4 thought Mae Young was bad, Jesus, they'd have a field day when they seen what happened with Terry. And for another thing, like much like they did in like the lead up to that famous ladder match between the Hardys and Edge and Christian at No Mercy, which is what's really really skyrocketed them in recent months. They've been getting a lot more feature, like the Hardys had that match the month before against the Dudleys. Like once again, they made the Hardys beat Edge and Christian about the one important thing, Terry Runnels.
Yeah, she's another one when you look back on it and you know that, you know, Lita is coming in the coming months, you know, to join Team Extreme. She just seems so out of place, you know, the former Marilena, she does seem somewhat of a new generation, early Attitude Era sort of feel, and we will talk about this a lot on this show, that there is certain people that feel that they don't belong here.
Also love how she's got a tag team, but she thinks, yeah, they can't protect me, so I'll hire another tag team to just stand there and think about it. You said that Lita's coming in the next couple months. Like the Hardys, in the space of like less than a year, have gone from Gangrel, went from Michael Hayes to Gangrel to Terry and then Lita. It's like the Hardys are a pair of like a good shirt you've got for a night out, but you can't find the pants to match it. So you got to go through a few different pairs before you find the one that matches it.
It's a very good analogy there. So it's a bit of an odd match. It starts 100 mile an hour. You know, we see Jeff doing his dives, we see Christian dive out to the outside. But then we just see the wearing down through various rest holds of Jeff Hardy. You know, we hear boring chants, we hear, you know, this is awful chants. It's a weird one that when you've got these guys, you have rest holds and you're slowing down a pace. It is good that, you know, later on through tag matches, including the boys and the ladder matches, that they did get to a point where it was like, right guys, go out there and just go 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think it's partly because the last time these fans would have seen them on pay-per-view, they would have had that ladder match that we mentioned before. So by comparison, I think to this audience, it wouldn't have been as exciting, especially since the Hardys were in a big violent table match in the month before. And the Hardys and Edge and Christian have proven they can do matches that don't revolve around gimmicks. They can have a good match, like they proved it for the most part here. But I think it's where we think of Hardys and Edge and Christian, the reason it's weird is because we think of them, it's always revolving around some sort of ladder, some sort of table spot, or something like that, or some sort of gimmick. So for see them just getting wearing down, doing actual like regular tag wrestling, it's a bit jarring.
The action does pick back up. There is actually a great spot where Jeff propels off of Matt looking to hit Edge, who's on the top rope, with a leg drop. But Edge flies off the turnbuckle and spears him out of midair. It's an absolutely amazing spot. There's a moment as well, there's a double pin which confuses referee Jimmy Corderas, which to me was stupid considering count the legal man.
Yeah.
Because he then turns around and shouts, I believe it's at Edge and Jeff Hardy, get out the ring, get out the ring, get out the ring. Like, so you knew they weren't the legal men, so
what would happen if you were counting the pin, the two guys legal, there's a kick out on that side, but then the other one's still going? Would you have continued the match? That's one of these things they don't really think about. They just think of the double pin spot because they think it looks cool when they both kick out too, so they don't. Logistics, people, logistics. But I mean, Jeff, as much as you love Jeff, like he's screwed up as many spots as he's connected with. And that's the nature of all these like daredevil antics that he's pulled off over the years. That there were a few close calls where it looked like Jeff would just about land on his neck. I think it was a sequence with Edge where he had to redo a move because the first time he tried it he nearly crippled himself.
Yeah. We then see the finish of the match and the real reason that Terry's bought protection from the APA. So she pushes Jeff from the top rope and then slaps Matt, who walks into a kill switch. Edge and Christian pick up the win. Matt grabs Terry by the hair to get an explanation, and the APA beat down on the Hardys, you know, earning their pay as Terry skips away to the best line that JR loves all night, which is, what a little bitch.
I mean, not a bad payday for the APA. Stand there in the middle of the aisle, watch a match, and then beat up the Hardys. You know, there's worse ways to earn your money, but like, it's weird because the whole thing with Terry is they went through this whole like tournament, this year's entry between Edge and Christian Hardys. They earned Terry's services, and even though she didn't fit with them, I think there could have been better ways for them to do it. Just around like, oh, I just fancied a change. Like, she doesn't go with Edge and Christian. She doesn't become the manager of the AP. I think in the coming months she'll be around like Perry Saturn or something like that at some point. So the reasons for, I think they just wanted a way to like, okay, she's not working either, so that it freed them up to eventually get Lita down the line, because as we've seen, even on their own, the Hardys are a bit.
So we cut backstage. Michael Cole asks Christian about what somewhat of a tainted victory. Christian goes, oh, you know, we weren't expecting that. Christian cuts a very babyface-like promo before Edge sort of yells at him and tells him, hey, we're heels. Edge says, regardless of the result or how they got it, they're going to WrestleMania and don't think the Hardys wouldn't have taken the same victory, which I think is fair considering in the Attitude Era where face and heel logic kind of went out the window at times.
Yeah, very much.
As we see later on with the face Rock using the referee distraction to hit Big Show with a chair. So we then cut from there to an almost crying Big Show He says his feelings were hurt by fans on SmackDown booing the proof that not his feet, but the Rock's hit the floor first. I spoke with Nathan on the Rumble 2000 show about this, and we both agreed this character post-Rumble does nothing for him. He's went from a corporate stooge to like Hell's henchman to an overcoming the odds babyface champ, which I don't understand considering he's 7 foot tall and 500 pounds, how you have to overcome odds there when you're bigger than every wrestler and you can throw them about with one hand. He then became an angry heel because he was screwed out the WWF title, and now he's a blubbering, complaining heel. He's been in WWF for a year at this point, and he's been absolutely ruined by this point.
I know, like, I remember when we were watching it, like, looking at Big Show's eyes, like, you look like you've just been crying or you're just about to cry. You're trying not to get to this point without crying, because fair play to Big Show, he's cried a lot in his career and he can usually just turn on the tears like that. And fair play to him, but when he's meant to be a monster, it doesn't work. He's like, instead of just being the giant who's like, I got screwed, I'm gonna beat the hell out of the Rock until I get my rightful shot at WrestleMania, he's just complaining like, it's not fair.
Yeah, the show zoomed in footage, which Big Show says shows the Rock's feet hitting the floor first. The footage shows the Rock's knees and thighs, but does not show his feet. Which is weird considering later on in the show we do see clearly that his feet hit first. It's but anyway, we'll get into more of that later when we talk the Rock Big Show match. But up next, Big Boss Man with Albert versus Taz. This is an odd match. Taz is going to the locker room on Sunday Night Heat. He's attacked by Boss Man and Albert. The match goes about 90 seconds with Taz controlling most of it. Then Albert jumps in the ring apron and attacks Taz, causing the DQ. The fans chant bullshit, and honestly it continues sort of just the plight of Taz where things aren't getting much better. I spoke to Nathan about this, about how the Rumble debut is one of the best of all time. You know, it's on WWE's top 10 list of greatest debuts. But do you think it's somewhat tainted or somewhat, you know, ruined when you look back on it, when you see, you know, he beat Angle in 90 seconds, now he's winning in 90 seconds, but it's by DQ where he gets beaten down for, you know, a good 5 minutes after the match. And then, you know, the next month he wins the hardcore title twice in the Battle Royal, but he's used as a sort of transitional champion. And then by the summer of 2000 he's feuding with Jerry Lawler over commentary duties.
I know, like, it's a weird one because I think Taz, when he came in, he'd already injured his neck in the past a few times, so it wasn't really long for the in-ring stuff, so it's really hard to top a debut as hot as that in New York for a crowd that you can tell the New York crowd were really into ECW and that. And it was weird because I think they just tried to portray Taz as a killer, so they'd have him, I think, on the Raws and that before killing the lower card guys, like the Mean Street Bosses, lower down the card as you could get, and then just having him randomly being beaten up by Boss Man. And Boss Man's kind of floating around as well. He's going to be gone in a few months because, like, once you've stolen a man's dad's coffin, really, there's nowhere else for you to go.
No, you sort of peak when you steal a man's dad's coffin while the man is on the back of it.
But I think what they were trying to do, you can see what they were trying to do with the fact that Taz kept getting back up and get back up, but like, it's kind of almost the opposite end of what they do in ECW and even his debuts, where yeah, you want to be a killer, but to be a killer he comes in and he beats him in 80 seconds, whereas this is like, oh, look at this plucky underdog Taz just because he's shorter than most people.
Yeah, it's a weird one as well because at WrestleMania, which we'll talk about when we get to WrestleMania 2000, there is an absolute plethora of single stars in random tag matches. And when we get to WrestleMania, Bossman is now teaming with the debuting Bull Buchanan, and Albert is now just Albert. He's no longer Prince Albert. He's teaming with Test and Trish Stratus as part of TNA, not that one. And you know, you think with lack of storyline, maybe, you know, if they had someone come out here like a, you know, even a Steve Blackman, who is like a legitimate fighter, you know, because he ended up involved with, you know, Al Snow, or if you had someone, just anyone, even if you had Bill Buchanan debut here and maybe be Taz's partner, you know, you could have done that, but it's silly, it goes nowhere, nothing really comes of it, and by the time WrestleMania's around, these guys are in 3 different matches. There's very good things about the Attitude Era, as we'll talk about long-term storytelling in a minute.
Yeah.
Very, very, very long-term storytelling, by the way. And then there's short-term storylines where if you don't watch the Raws and SmackDown, or if you don't know the context, you do kind of get lost going from pay-per-view to pay-per-view.
Yeah, because like I said, there you can see what they're trying to do. Like they had the spot where Bossman hits him with a nightstick and it just breaks in half, and Bossman like sells the shock of it, and he just seems to be angry that Taz keeps getting back up. It's one of those things where, yeah, have him take a lot of punishment, but it's the fact he's down on the mat for a lot of it, just getting kicked while he's down. And like I said, the crowd are just chanting bullshit, so it's one of those things like the crowd just don't buy it. They don't like how he's being kind of presented, because like I said, he almost peaked when he debuted at the Rumble, and
yeah, it is a silly one. But so the next match on the card, no holds barred match, X-Pac with that Jezebel Tori versus Kane and that other Jezebel and his father Paul Bearer. No hold barred match. We talked about Jericho and China ran from Survivor Series to WrestleMania, and it went too long. This went longer, but it was done a bit better, you know. I think we do talk, and X-Pac themselves talked, you know, this is where it should have ended. And I think they're maybe just a month too early on this no holds barred match. But this is a very good storyline, and for the viewers who never watched the Attitude Era or aren't up to date on the Kane X-Pac saga, I'm going to fill you in, so brace yourselves. Kane and X-Pac are like a Daniel Bryan Kane sort of Hell No tag team. They're 2-time tag team champions. X-Pac tells Kane he's not going to leave him for D-Generation X. DX is just something he does on the side, but Kane is his brother. X-Pac then lies to his brother and rejoins D-Generation X. Kane beats X-Pac via DQ at Survivor Series 1999 because Triple H and Road Dogg interfere, and Triple H hits Kane with the WWF title. Kane's then girlfriend Tori tries to save Kane, but is roundhouse kicked by X-Pac. Kane then defeats X-Pac in a steel cage match at Armageddon 1999. And then the next night on Raw, Tori challenges Stephanie McMahon to a match, but Stephanie McMahon subs herself last minute for X-Pac, who beats her down and wins with ease. Kane can't save her, as he's been taken out by the Main Street Posse backstage. Kane, the next week, on the Go Home Raw before Christmas, is given a WWF title match against the Big Show as an apology. However, if he loses, he has to let X-Pac spend Christmas with Tori. The New Age Outlaws distract Kane, costing him the match, and means X-Pac and Tori must spend Christmas together. Tori then returns to tell Kane that despite the bravado and the showmanship at X-Pac, he has nothing to worry about, and if she could use one word to describe X-Pac, it would be gentlemanly. However, Tori then becomes paranoid that people are talking about her and starts to unleash Kane on people. Other superstars use this to their advantage. Triple H and China used Kane and Tori's paranoia to set Kane on Chris Jericho, and Mick Foley does it to set Kane on the fake Mankind played by Midian. X-Pac then eliminates Kane from the 2000 Royal Rumble, and X-Pac reveals on a SmackDown that Tori seduced him at Christmas, and Tori confirms it when she kisses X-Pac in the middle of the ring and leaves Kane for X-Pac. Kane is then stricken with grief and institutionalised. He then returns during a 10-man tag on Raw with Paul Bearer in tow with brand new snazzy red jacket. A red jacket that when he floated around almost made him say, "Hey look, I have a new jacket." He returns with Paul Bearer to attack DX and the Radicals. The SmackDown 10 days before the pay-per-view, he tombstones Tori. On the Go Home Raw, he's told by Triple H he can't just go around tombstoning women, which is ironic considering X-Pac beat the hell out of the women. if Kane can beat Triple H and a partner of his choosing in a 2-on-1 handicap match, he can have X-Pac in any match he likes. Triple H picks the Big Show, and thanks to help from The Rock, Kane beats X-Pac and chooses a no-holds-barred match. And then on the Go Home SmackDown, which is the most, if you think that's ridiculous, the most ridiculous thing from this angle, on the Go Home SmackDown, X-Pac shoots a fireball into the face of Kane. Quite a lot to take in there, Scott.
This is the true beginning of X-Pac heat, in my opinion. I know, like I said at the start, Ross, I know why you brought me here. You just brought me here to relive all the shit that they put poor Kane through. Just the whole X-Pac gets to spend Christmas with Tori. It's one of those stipulations that's oddly specific. You think that's what's going to happen. They're going, so-and-so's going to win, and then that's going to happen. Like, I want this highly specific thing. But I do love the Kane return with Paul Bearer on Raw for a few reasons. One, obviously the reaction, the crowd, and also how JR says, "My God, Kane!" You know, Paul Bearer's return, and also the fact that when the lights go initially, it's like Radicals and DX. You like, was it the Radicals and Mick Foley v DX? And
No, it's The Rock, Mick Foley, and the 3 members of Too Cool against, I believe it's Triple H and the 4 members of the Radicals. But like the McMahon Helmsley faction and DX are all floating about the outside.
Yeah, so like Stephanie's out there because Triple H is there, and she's on commentary, and then when the lights initially go before the organs hit, you hear Stephanie turn to JR, go, "JR, what did you do?"
Yeah, JR used to always get the blame for silly things. Like General Lodge go, "That was that you?"
And we learned where Kane truly was. He was away getting his new gear because he brings back the reverse gear, where he switches around the black and red, which is awesome. And it may seem a weird thing to say, but I think they were a bit early on the tombstoning of Tori, because they should have saved that for here, because Kane does that again here, which is weird. When a woman gets tombstoned the second time, it doesn't have as much impact as the first time.
No, it's a weird sort of storyline. It does sort of seem like they ran out of steam sort of too soon. You think maybe if they did, you know, Xbox talked about how he got offered an IC title match with Chris Jericho. If you maybe had Road Dogg versus Chris Jericho for the title, and you could have done 2-on-1, you know, loses, like if they lose they need to leave, you know, the WWF, blah blah blah. You know, it's just a...
I know why they probably continued on and made it, because Mania is meant to be where you blow off like storylines, so you have like Kane come up short here, so the next pack can get his comeuppance and Tori will get her comeuppance on. It's maybe like, you've already tombstoned Tori twice, there's a lot more you can really do, and like getting, I think it would have been better if Kane beat X-Pac in a straight up singles match rather than a random tag match, which he ends up doing. So like, so I see what they were doing, but like I said, like Kane coming back, I don't know what Kane would have done at Mania if he hadn't done the thing with X-Pac, but like after the return a few weeks ago, you really need to strike while it's hot, because then you've got like a month to wait for Mania, and that's when things start to cool off. But I do love Paul Bearer here. I mean, he has some of the best facial expressions in all of wrestling. And then he just tells a story, you go to hell, she slaps him, and then Paul Bearer proceeds to chase her around the ring.
By the way, that match, it was Triple H, X-Pac, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn, because Eddie Guerrero was injured at the time, which we'll touch on later, against The Rock, Too Cool and Cactus Jack.
There we go.
Yeah, Kane and X-Pac, they fight all over the arena, they fight up to the entrance cage, they use trash cans, they use guardrails, they fight into the crowd, you know, they use the ring bell on each other. Paul Bearer attacks X-Pac first, and it is the sort of, the look that he gives Tori when she slaps him, because it's meant to be like a scary, sinister look. He just looks like a ghetto lady. Like,
no, you did not.
Can you imagine that in Paul Bear's voice? Oh no, you didn't.
I know you did not just slap me.
It's a great match, sort of Attitude Era style match. JR, you know, at the end of the match, like, well, that was a hell of a contest. Kane tombstones Tori again. He then does it again at WrestleMania. As you said, it kind of loses the steam after a while. But Kane tombstones Tori, and then goes to pick up the steps, the steel steps that are on the ring. That's steps there, I said it about 4 times, steps. X-Pac then hits him with a spinning heel kick. The steps fall onto Kane. He jumps on top of Kane and pushes the weight of the stairs down to get the 1, 2, 3. It's the commentators really sell this, actually. It's quite brilliant. JR's annoyed that X-Pac didn't get his comeuppance because like, oh damn it. Whereas King is absolutely wetting himself laughing. He's like, you didn't give X-Pac a chance, you didn't give him a chance, you didn't give him a chance. It's as if he's won a straight up wrestling match with Kane, even though he's kicked the stairs into his face.
I know. It is a smart move because it's a very creative way to keep Kane strong for eventually getting his revenge, and like it makes X-Pac look like a smarmy heel, which he plays very well. So I really get why I really enjoyed that finish. I think they've done it a few times, like with someone like Kane. But I also liked how like they kept on about the fireball, and like Kane asking like, does this bring back traumatic memories from Kane's childhood? And Kane's just battering X-Pac up where the cell bit at the entrance, he's ramming him in the cage like, you want X-Pac to be disfigured just like him.
There is some weird lines in commentary. So we cut backstage, the Radicals are getting a promo. You can see why 3 of the 4 guys out of this were not well known for promos.
No.
Dean Malenko does well.
No, he doesn't.
He does okay. Trust me, when we talk about Chris Benoit and Perry Saturn, you'll owe Dean an apology. He does okay, right? He does okay. He's the sort of de facto leader of the Radicals. Then we see Chris Benoit intimidating Michael Cole, like, are we a joke to you? Do we look like we like making jokes? Do we look like we enjoy dancing?
He didn't ask you that, but okay.
Then Perry Saturn, in reference to Too Cool, because they're facing Too Cool and Rikishi, says, the only dancing that we like is done on top of bars for dollar bills. A very dated reference there. Something I don't think that would fly now. And then, thank God, Eddie Guerrero speaks, the one person that could actually cut a promo in that group. He says he'll be there for moral support. He was bonsai dropped on Raw, injured shoulder and all, by Rikishi. But he'll be there for moral support, and then pulls out a bit of pipe and says he's going to go after Rikishi's ankle. Rikishi's got the injured ankle, but he's wrestling. Eddie Guerrero, you know, the numbers advantage is being played up here, the fact that the Radicals are a member down, but they still have the same advantage. So 6-man tag match, Rikishi and Too Cool versus Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn. Match starts, the Radicals get Too Cool at the ring and sort of isolate Rikishi, and they distract the ref. This allows Eddie Guerrero to try hit Rikishi with the lead pipe. But then Rikishi reverses him and then hits him with the lead pipe and makes Eddie Guerrero's involvement in this entire show null and void and pointless.
The fact that the Radicals were even a group to begin with, like, I get why you made them a group because they all came over at the same time. So rather than debut them separately, debut them together, but like, it just seems to be a case of, you guys are all from WCW, so you must all know each other. Put it together, and then you can tell also no one in WWE watched WCW because like Saturn, like 3 out of the 4 guys are known for being heels. She had Saturn, who was a member of Raven's Flock for a while, and Eddie spent most of his time as a heel in the Cruiserweights and then started the LWO, and Benoit was a former Horseman, so he's spent time as a heel, whereas Malenko, his most notable storyline is as a face against Jericho, because Jericho, after he beat him, said that he made his dad, he's ashamed to his father or something like that, and just like mocked Malenko for months. So basically it's a case of, you know, you're technically good wrestlers and you're all from WCW, so that's your only real personality trait. Way to get.
Yeah, they were originally brought in, they reference it in commentary, by Cactus Jack. Cactus Jack brought these guys in to basically back him up against Triple H and DX, but then Stephanie and Triple H offer them lucrative deals, and then they turn on Mick Foley and basically align themselves with the bad guys, and they sort of get diluted down because obviously DX was already pretty big at this point. You know, you had Stephanie, Tori, Triple H, Road Dogg, X-Pac, Billy Gunn. So there's, I believe that's 6 right there. Tori, Stephanie, X-Pac, Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, Triple H.
Yeah.
You've got sort of Big Show as an on and off again member of like an uneasy alliance just because he wants to get to The Rock. So there's 7 guys right there, and now this massive stable now has 11 guys in it, and they're just getting lost in the crowd. Something me and Gary Kellen have talked about before, and you'll definitely see it when we get to WrestleMania. The Radicals are one of these things you really wish you could go back and rebook it.
Yeah, definitely, because it's a weird thing where, like, mainly Eddie and Benoit was going to be the two who would occasionally splinter off, but one of them would always come back. It would usually be Benoit that came back, and judging by the promo segment that before this, you can see why Eddie was the one who was always going off on his own, because like you said, he's the only one who had any real personality. Because as much as I love Dean Blanco, as soon as I make Drew Kane, I'm like, oh good lord. There's a reason why you didn't go that much further.
So the theme of the match is chop blocks, because there's about 1,000 in this match. Technical wrestlers Benoit and Dean Malenko constantly going for the ankle of, I was going to say Triple H there, constantly going for the ankle of Rikishi. It's a standard first 6-man tag. Rikishi ends up picking the win for his team after powering through to climb the top rope on his bad ankle and hit a bonsai drop on poor Malenko. I have an issue with this, it shouldn't have counted.
How so?
Because when the 1 starts, his hand's on the rope, he then lets go, it goes 2, and then right before 3, he grabs onto the rope again. So technically he's using the ropes for leverage, it shouldn't have counted.
Yeah, I think I forgot about this, but
I think everyone forgot about it. I just needed something to talk about in this match, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is a show where the good is really good, but the bad is very bad.
Yeah, this is kind of placed between this and like the Rock's like match. So basically, it was put between 2 marquee matches. So it was kind of a place filler. Despite the fact it had really good wrestling, and the crowd were so hot for Too Cool. And like, I think if Twitter was around in 2000, there'd be 1,000 tweets going about how the Radicals have been immediately buried upon their arrival. And because you think about it, a new kind of stable coming in from invading WWE almost from WCW, because that's why they were called the Radicals, because they defected over. You just assume that they would win, because as good as Too Cool and Rikishi are, they'll still be popular, win or lose.
It's one of these ones, it's a very Vince McMahon trait, like, the guys from somewhere else are good, the guys I made are better, and we have to show it at every turn. There is no quarter given. So, as you said, that it's stuck between 2 marquee matches, and the next match for the number 1 contendership and Rock's Royal Rumble spot at WrestleMania, The Rock faces off against Big Show. As we mentioned, it's sad to see 1 year's in and Big Show is just a whiny big bitch. The promo package here and Rock's promos himself do nothing for the Big Show. It's the fact that Big Show couldn't obviously hang with Rock on the mic, and it's the Rock's footage where he goes, I have footage of the Big Show, and it's just a photo, it's Rock in the gear that he's wearing, obviously taking 5 minutes before they went on stage, just going, making the choke slam motion. Big Show does have a really cool entrance though at this point. The original Well It's the Big Show theme, and then the whole, when he gets in the ring, he puts his hand over the ropes, throws his hand in the air, and it's almost as if the pyro showers over the top of him.
Yeah.
And it does look amazing. It's just a shame that he's sort of a month in, it's a year in, and he's an absolute joke. You know, he's managed to change gimmicks 3 times in 3 months, from December 99 to current.
And the promo bags, I know Triple H plays a factor in that. He is the champion, and it might be him or Cactus that they go on to face at Mania, so he plays a part in this. but he's in the video package more than The Rock is, because Big Show keeps trying to provide new evidence to Triple H and Steffi because they run the show. And it's a weird one then that the heel of the story says, "I was screwed, I deserve my rightful shot," and the babyface goes, "You're stupid." Basically.
Yeah, The Rock didn't really fit the mould of a proper babyface, did he?
No, it's like what you were saying earlier about Attitude Era, about regular, typical babyface and heel actions. Like,
I really like the start of this match. The Rock's entrance, usually he stands up on the turnbuckle, he looks down on the guy, and then the bell rings and he just sort of looks down at them, then he comes down. But because it really amps up what's at stake here, it's about going to WrestleMania. Rock is down from the turnbuckle, he's right in Big Show's face while his music is still playing, he's trash talking him, and as soon as the bell rings, Rock hits first. And this match starts 100 miles an hour, goes into the crowd. JR references how he likes how the referee is letting the count go. It's too big a match to be decided on count out.
a similar thing that you would be complaining about nowadays with AEW.
Yes. Big Show and The Rock fighting in the crowd. Rock with a massive back body drop on poor Big Show. There's a really, really, really funny line, and Errol Hebner looks shocked. I don't think Big Show was meant to say this to him, but it's when we get back into the ring, and he goes to pin The Rock, and Errol's out of position, so he takes longer to count. Rock gets his shoulder up, and Big Show just stands up, gets in Errol Hebner's face and goes, "You're not screwing me, Errol." Obviously a reference to the Montreal Screwjob. This match goes about 7 minutes, but the actual finish itself goes for about 3 minutes because there's just so much that happens. So that's all you go.
Before you go into the finish, like someone else thinking as I was watching this, I was thinking, Big Show had a habit over the years of being put with the same guys every so often for ages, and then after a few years be put back with them again. Like, you think, how many times has he and The Undertaker, him and Kane, had basically the same...
Him and John Cena.
Like, I was going to say, him and Kane or him and Undertaker have the same match over and over, two big guys. Occasionally there's a double choke slam attempt. Him and Cena fall the same apart, and that every time Cena manages to get Big Show up for an AA, they act surprised if he's never done it before, even though he has. And yet somehow The Rock is one of the few people that Big Show's faced multiple times where he always seemed to have a good match with. It was very rare for Big Show to have multiple good matches with the same people, and The Rock was one of the people.
Yeah, I think they're very well suited. Sometimes people just click together. So a frustrated Big Show, about 4 minutes into the match, he brings a chair into the mix, and in the ensuing scuffle, Errol Hebner's knocked down. Big Show then hits The Rock with a massive chokeslam. He has the match won, in all fairness.
Rock was great at taking the old school Big Show chokeslam where he held on to them. The Rock was one of the best at taking that.
So Tim White comes out to make the count, but is pulled out of the ring by Errol Hebner as if he's going, "No, it's my match."
My podcast.
The two of them start a massive brawl with each other.
Just one more fight about my referee.
Stop it. But who should appear to break up the fight but none other than a returning Shane O'Mac. He gets an absolutely amazing pop. JR and King are surprised to see him. And The Rock, in this ensuing scuffle, hits the Big Show with a chair to the head. He then hits him with the rock bottom. He then goes for the people's elbow, but is hit by Shane McMahon, who flies in, grabs the chair, and throws it in The Rock's face. Shane then gets Tim White back in the ring. Tim White, who's in the middle of pummeling poor Errol Hebner. Big Show rolls over on top of Rock. 1, 2, 3. Big Show is going to main event WrestleMania. The finish is good, but then you think it doesn't do much else for Big Show when you've had to have the boss's son help you defeat The Rock. You know,
this is automatically the best run-in in the world. And I get you when you say about the pop for Shane, because at this time it's before he's currently Here Comes the Money, so Shane's using the same theme song that Vince would use. So the theme song itself gets a pop, and it's a bit of uncertainty, like, is this Vince? Because Vince has been away for a while, ever since the night after Armageddon. And or is it Shane? Because Shane's been a bit more often, even though Stephanie's kind of the one running the show. So like the plot itself, you're wondering, well, what's going to happen? Because like, as much as the McMahons got too involved, especially at this time, whenever one of the McMahons came around, especially after they'd been away for a while, the fans knew to expect something big.
Yeah. The Rock is in the ring for another 5 minutes just yelling obscenities and trash talking. Big Show's going to WrestleMania.
And there was much rejoice.
And it sort of becomes clear in the coming months that Shane joined up forces with Big Show because he wants to take the company for Stephanie and he wants his guy on top, and it leads to the 4 McMahons in the corner.
Let me ask this about the Rock, the whole thing about the Rock's feet touching. Do you think this was an intentional thing, or did the Rock accidentally gather too much momentum? Or
I think he gathers too much. The Big Show runs at some speed in the actual Rumble match, and I think it's how much Big Show weighs that just it forces, because 500 pounds on the top of your legs are going to go downwards.
Yeah.
And there's not much room for them to lean. And I think it's just a case of, thankfully the camera angle was very well positioned, that we didn't have to worry about it, and thankfully it was a superstar like The Rock, who at this point is the hottest superstar in wrestling. People could say, by default because Stone Cold was out of action, but who else came near him in terms of popularity, and with WCW on its backside? Who there was anywhere near what The Rock was at this point? But
yeah, because and especially in late '99, even a few months before Austin leaves, The Rock is still getting some of the biggest reactions on the show. I mean, Austin still got big reactions. That's only because his injuries were keeping him off TV more and more. So it's just whenever he came back, you'd get a reaction because people weren't expecting to see him. But I do agree with you. I think it's more a case of just having to be good fortune that The Rock got his feet touched the floor, because even though it wasn't planned, it gave them a way to insert Big Show into the scene, because you got to think that they had the idea for the Fatal 4-8 planned in advance, and this just happened to be a way for them to get Big Show in the mix to then for Rock to get screwed. Because if The Rock's feet hadn't touched the floor, you got to wonder how they would get Big Show in, because Big Show is technically in the right, so he has the right to be in this match, and then the storyline machine gets him in the Fatal 4-way. And Linda feeling, I'm not talking about that yet, but that I think how else would Big Show get in the match if The Rock's feet didn't touch?
I think they would have just done the whole Triple H is in charge, Triple H hates The Rock. Alright, Big Show, you did a favor for me, you can fight The Rock, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned, there's sort of segments with Kurt Angle throughout the night. He's celebrating the whole night through. I joked on retro reviews before that 2000 Kurt Angle looks like 2019 David Hockney. But my God, here it's just, he's got the leather jacket and everything. It's
off to his body pump classes.
So Kurt Angle's putting his gear in the taxi. Jericho and Chyna attack Kurt Angle as he's getting into his taxi and throw him into his trunk. Chyna here, she's dressed like one of the Global Gym Purple Cobras from Dodgeball. That's the only way to describe this tracksuit. Jericho is still ring gear. This is a sort of last promo package just before we get right into the main event. And it's been building to this all night. The set's built on this. And we talk about it on the WrestleMania 2000 one. Obviously, you mentioned it earlier that Kane versus X-Pac came maybe a month too soon. That, there's certain matches on this show that should have been a month later. This, to me, is another match that should have been a month later. I wouldn't have minded maybe if we did a ladder match for, you could put a briefcase in the ring, and in the briefcase is the WWF title and Mick Foley's contract. And then, because when myself, Gary and Derek on the WrestleMania review talk about rebooking this, I mentioned that The Rock could have got his title match on a Raw before WrestleMania because he earned it. He wins the WWF title and goes in as defending champion against the Big Show. You can still have Vince and Shane in the corners, and then you could have this Hell in a Cell with Mick having Linda in his corner and Triple H with Stephanie in his corner. You could make it a Hell in a Cell match for control of the company. This, to me, because this match is sensational, is a match that came a month too soon, and it's just a shame it's not on a bigger pay-per-view. It's technically a B pay-per-view. It's the Hell in a Cell match for the WWF Championship and Mick Foley's career. It's Triple H with the WWF Champion with Stephanie McMahon his corner versus Mick Foley's Cactus Jack persona. Cactus Jack has promised to dive from the cell once more like he did in '98, but this time he's not going through a table, he's going through Triple H's head. That is such a good line.
That is good. And I think it's hard to class shows like this as B pay-per-views considering how hot the product is at the time. I do get what you're saying, and it's one of those things where Mick Foley in this match and the match the month before in the street fight really helped elevate Triple H, because before that Triple H was feuding with Vince and with Stone Cold, and yet Stone Cold wasn't at his best, so it was really, Triple H still didn't feel like the guy, but Mick Foley really helped him. And like a lot of people talk about The Rock and Triple H should have been like a singles match at WrestleMania. Like, you really could have used Mick Foley to help The Rock as well, because The Rock and Mick Foley were friends, they were in the Rock and Sock, so you can play off the fact that The Rock is angry that he doesn't like Triple H, he wants the title, but also Triple H retired his best friend, so you can play off that. The thing with The Rock is, like, I love how we talk about how what should have been Rock Triple H singles match, and then the Backlash match is the example of how good it is. I said about how hot the product is at this time, yet a lot of people will admit that The Rock Stone Cold at Backlash was better than the Mania 15 match, but it's weird how the B pay-per-view that technically B pay-per-view that comes after the WrestleMania and the hottest period of the company's history is better than the Mania main event. As hot as they are, they still somehow don't put on the most entertaining or the biggest Mania main event.
Do you think that's maybe just because it's WrestleMania, it's got too big a sort of expectation, whereas when you go into, we saw recently in WWE in 2019, you know, Stomping Grounds, nobody expected that to be any good, and it ended up being brilliant. Is that an indication that sometimes when you go into things with no expectations, like a B pay-per-view, that things look better, whereas WrestleMania, just the imagination runs wild?
Yeah, I think it's a case of also they've got the star power and they've got fan interest that's at its peak. So, like, especially with one year before The Rock, Austin, them finally coming together in a big stage. So you got the expectation of that, and you got the fact that everybody wanted The Rock to win at WrestleMania, and then you got Foley and Big Show getting involved, and the fact that McMahon's there, so it's all the chaos. I think the 2000 one kind of suffers from overbooking, whereas the Mania 15 one is more of a high expectation of finally seeing Rock and Austin collide.
Fair enough. So, obviously in the promo package, Jack's promised to jump off the cage. As soon as the cage comes down, he goes to the door, and we see that this has been padlocked about 15 times.
Yeah.
There's padlocks everywhere to stop Mick Foley getting out. And Mick, just the entire time, even when he's on the offense or when he's on the defense, he's looking under the ring, he's looking for stuff to find. And there's so many brutal shots. I mean, he's 34 here, and you see his knees are done in, he's knackered, he's walking like he's crouched. And you can see why, because there's chair shots to the head, there's Triple H throwing the stairs at him, he's knocked from pillar to post, but eventually Cactus Jack finds a way out of that cell. He throws the stairs at Triple H ducks. The cell wall sort of gives away a bit, and Cactus Jack decides, well, instead of going through that gap gently, or instead of maybe throwing those stairs again, I'm going to propel my whole fucking body and throw myself through that wall like the Kool-Aid Man.
Like, he listens to it a bit, like, he listens to it even more so he can get out, and then he Irish puts Triple H in it so that we can both get out. Why not just throw Triple H into it the first time and save yourself a bit more damage?
It's a very much make way for Willie. Yeah, once the action spills to the outside, you know, there's pile drivers on the announce table. There's, you know, there's weapon shots. There's even Stephanie McMahon gets threatened by Mick Foley. She stops him climbing the cell.
Yeah.
He chases her down. So much happening here, but I think the main part happens when they get on top of the cell.
Yeah, that's the issue that Mick Foley has even commented on, and that he could tell that the crowd, as hot as they were, they wanted to see him go on top of the cell, because last time he was in Hell in a Cell he went off the cell, and that's what everyone remembers. And you can tell because as soon as the cage goes away, the crowd come alive because they realise, oh, what's going to happen? He's going to go back up the cell. What's he going to do this time? I'm going to say Stephanie, as much as she gets criticism nowadays, she played her part really well, and actually on the outside looking terrified every time, like when Cactus busted open Triple H on rubbing his face against the side of the cell. She looked terrified, and like she helped to grab his leg when he was trying to climb up the cage. So like she played her part well. This is at the time where she was still like, she wasn't overbearing as she is nowadays.
Yeah, she wasn't all over the product backstage and on screen. It's a sort of, it's a simpler time. You know, we've talked. I talked with Nathan that the McMahon Helmsley faction and, you know, the authority angle and all that, it's commonplace now. You know, Gary even said that the company has made the bad guy far too often, so you can't root for WWE as a product at times.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, it was interesting because we had Mr. McMahon from 97 to 99. Now we had the McMahon Helmsley era. We had a wrestler in charge for the first time ever, sort of thing. You know, we've seen, you know, the wrestler running the asylum. You know, we saw, you know, Baron Corbin have his run as constable. But this was new hat, and then Stephanie, who had played the whole, you know, doe-eyed daughter. You know, Shane was the bastard spawn, but Stephanie was always up there, standing by her mother's side. You know, she didn't want to get, you know, involved in these things. So it is, as you said, it is new for the time. So much happens up on top of this cell.
Yeah.
Triple H nearly falls through it.
Aye. And you could tell there was a bit of a whoa from the crowd because they thought he was going to go right through.
Yeah, and that, thankfully, nothing happened because he's right above the turnbuckle.
Oh.
And the last thing he wanted was like another Owen Hart situation where... And also, they're up there, Jack hits him with a DDT. There's obviously the bit, first time they go up, Triple H pushes him off.
You see he's about to climb down after Cactus, and then he sees Cactus get up and he looks like, oh crap, and he's like, I'm not coming back down here, I'm not going down there with him. So then Cactus has to climb back up, and he's got the 2x4, and he's saying, what's worse than a 2x4 wrapped in barbed wire? And the answer to that, set it on fire.
Yes, he sets the 2x4 on fire. He DDTs him on top of the cage. I believe Triple H suplexes him, or
I think so.
Yeah, Jack suplexes him as well. And then the moment that we were all waiting for, the one time that it was meant, because it wasn't meant in 1998, Cactus Jack goes for a pile driver, and Triple H flips him over, sends him through the cage and through the ring, just all the way to... This is the sort of the stunts I think we're expecting to see in Hell in a Cell now, and I think it's why it, along with, you know, it being bastardised with the actual Hell in a Cell event, that we don't see these spots anymore. And Mick Foley himself came out and said, good, you know, you don't want to take these bumps, are horrendous.
No, because like, I think it's because we've seen the likes of Mick Foley go through the toilet cell. Whenever someone does like a simple move like a DDT or suplex on top of the cage, there's a bit of like you that because you worry at any moment the thing could go through, because it looks uneven as hell up there. Because even if you're not planning on going through or going off, it must be terrifying to be up there. And what I found weird is, I was like, Cactus was going for the power drive, he was going to do it on them burning 2x4, And just after they do the spot, they decide, yeah, let's just leave this burning bit of wood on top of this metal cell.
It's something else as well. You mentioned it looks uneven. I think it's the way the wrestlers walk. These are like 250 to 300 pound guys on these cages that are designed to give way. I think they're not wanting to, you know, step in the wrong thing and then it, you know, triggered, bang, down we go.
The thing with the ring giving way is some people might not like the idea because it looks, that immediately gives away that the fact that it was kind of planned. I think at the time the image of something going through the ring was still fairly new, so I like the idea, and plus I think Mick Foley appreciated it because it gave a bit of give, considering the last time he went through this cage. And like he said, Mick Foley, are only 34 years of age. I'm thinking like, Jesus Christ, he does not look, he looks like 10 years older. Cause
he looks 10 years older than he does now.
I know, like, because you look at him and Kerry Funk when they were together in the WF as Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack, and if you ask me what's the age difference between these two, I would say about 5 years, and it's nearly 20 between the two.
Yeah, you can tell obviously Terry grew up in an era where it was, you know, Southern Wrestling, NWA era sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, and he tried the deathmatch stuff later on. There's a great visual as well when they mention it. Joe Frazier in his last match sat in the stool and went out on the stool, and Mick Foley says, I'm not going to go out in my corner on my stool like Joe Frazier, I'm not going to go out that way. Triple H sets up a chair and it sits there the entire time. Triple H climbs down, he kicks Mankind's arm, and the other arm goes up as if to say I'm still up. You know, there's the sort of nod to the chair like, just go, give up. He refuses to give up, and then there's that last gasp. Pedigree, it's the moment you know it's over, but you don't want it to be over. It's the dread. You hear he's been calling him Cactus Jack the entire match. He's tried to, you know, keep the gimmick well, but JR just shouts, "Kick out, Mick! Kick out!" And he even says during the match himself, JR goes, "I'm emotionally biased in this match." The 3 hits, and it's as if usually, and you can see it at WrestleMania before, you know, the reign of trash throws it into the ring. When a heel won, there was still cheers because people liked that many people in the match. It's almost as if the air is sucked out of the place. Yeah,
because the idea of like Mick Foley is so loved because it's like he can be a serious like deathmatch style wrestler, but he can also be a really funny wrestler, and he can really endear himself to a crowd. And I think it goes to show how what he's done for Triple H as a heel. They're doing also the idea of playing on the idea of the dream of going to WrestleMania, and I think a lot of fans at some point envision themselves as a wrestler going on to WrestleMania, so the idea of that being taken away from him. And Jerry Lawler, as the heel going to, also sides with McMahon's in that, and kind of being a suck up because obviously Triple H and Jeffrey run the show, they're technically his boss, so he sides with them, and he acts terrified the idea of Triple H being locked in there with Cactus Jack. But even like everything that Cactus goes through, you hear Jerry Lawler as the pin's dream made was, no dream was worth this. And it's almost kind of even like Jerry finds it hard to watch, and also, as you said, JR makes this moment with the pleading with Mick to kick out, even though he knows it's probably impossible for him to kick out at this stage.
It's one of those matches, we talk about the emotion of it, and then you realise that a company that's not going to be born for another 2 years, in 9 years Mick Foley's going to be their champion.
I know.
It does sort of sour the moment that he wrestles for another 12 years. You know, he fights for the WWF title after being fired and threatening his career at the Royal Rumble and at No Way Out 2000, and then at Royal Rumble 2012 he's an entrant in it and lasts a good 6 to 8 minutes.
I know. I mean, he had, like I said, Terry Funk coming in 97. He was in ECW winning the title briefly on the first ever preview. A year later he's in the WWF as Chainsaw Charlie, when in 1983 he had his first retirement, and here he is like 14-15 years later.
It's one of those ones I do like though, because it does lead to quite a funny promo when he does get brought back and he says, "I said I wasn't going to come back in 4 weeks, I did it in 3."
I know, and it's a shame that, like, as much iconic as a moment it is, this is one of the times where I kind of caused me to dislike the 98 Hell in a Cell of Mick Foley, because that's what you think when you think the words Hell in a Cell and Mick Foley, you think this, and that because that's all about a moment. Because I couldn't tell you really why Undertaker and Mick Foley were fighting in that particular match. Whereas you know why Mick Foley's in this match, and this is more of a story-based match, and it kind of often gets forgotten half the time because people won't remember that other one.
Something as well, so as you'll probably hear in the backing track for this show, it's The Rock's theme song.
Yeah. So
basically, just to let the viewers in on this, we are going to have, every year we do for the retro review, whoever's year it was, sort of thing, that's who it is. And as much as this is The Rock's year, The Rock has a 4-month run with the WWE title throughout the summer. He feuds with everyone from Rikishi to Triple H to Big Show to Benoit to Kane to Undertaker. He fights everyone and has so many good matches, but I mentioned how the Rock Triple H portion of the WrestleMania main event is amazing. I mentioned how you've mentioned the Backlash match. We'll touch on Judgment Day later. So many good Triple H Rock matches, and you've just had 2 great matches against, people talk about what Mick Foley did for Triple H. Triple H did for Mick Foley as well, because Mick Foley could barely walk at this time.
Yeah, it's definitely right to have the Rock's theme for the year 2000, because I think a few people were as hot into the year 2000 as the Rock, and as great Triple H as he was the perfect foil to the Rock, and the Rock was perfect foil to him, because Triple H, as great a heel as he is, we found out in 2003 and 2004 where you don't have a big enough star as a face to go up against a great heel like Triple H. You have the likes of Triple H holding on to the title for ages and beating so many potential guys, whereas you can afford to take the title off him for a while and still maintain him as a top heel when you have someone as over as The Rock is.
Yeah, but obviously the argument could be made for this being Triple H's year. I believe he is PWI's Wrestler of the Year in this, actually.
Yeah, I think it was around this time he won also maybe PWI Wrestling Observer. He won Most Improved Wrestler of the Year as well.
So this is sort of the rebirth of the birth of the game.
The game.
So just before we finish up, what are your thoughts on this pay-per-view as a whole? What would be 2 highlights and 2 lowlights?
Highlights, definitely the main event, I would say, and as much as I don't like the involvement of Cherry, I think the tag match between the Hardys and Edge and Christian is solid. I was going to say, in a while after this, Stephanie's going to be holding the women's title for ages and never defending it. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know until just there. There was no women's match on the show, and I could not tell you who the women's champion is at this time period.
It was the Cat at Armageddon. I believe she drops it to Jacqueline, who then drops it to Stephanie.
I know, the title change is so important that it wasn't even on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I think lowlights would... the lack of Viscera is definitely a lowlight for me. I get why Kane lost, because they wanted the story even though it probably ran its course. I think maybe the Radicals triple threat because it was just so all over the place and hard to pay attention to, and the Radicals being so new, you want to establish them and want to make us care about them, and for the most part they don't have the personality a lot of the time on the mic to do so, and WWE didn't seem that keen on presenting them as such.
So my 2 highlights, I will go with the Rock Big Show match, because I'm trying not to take ones that you didn't pick. The Rock Big Show match, because you had stakes, you had Rock just going for the Big Show, you had Big Show with a legitimate gripe, even though he does win, that he should have won beforehand with the big chokeslam. You had the massive pop with Shane, and you had the massive brawl with the referees, which, as much as it was slagged, it was hilarious. And I'll go with the continuing rebirth of the Attitude Era, new stars, the likes of Angle, Benoit, Jericho, what have you.
Sorry, it's meant to say, I know I took Mabel as my second low light because I couldn't think of it. I just remembered, and it shows why it should be a low light, because I just forgot, even though we talked about it 20 minutes ago. Taz v the Boss Man, that's a low light for me.
Fair enough. My low light would be China and Jericho's continued alliance, because it just doesn't fit Chris Jericho, and Chris Jericho, if you've ever read, I believe it's his second book, is not at all complimentary about China.
No.
And the other low light, I think we're going to go with the lack of women on this show. Just the women's title's held hostage for a good while after this, until I believe it's Lita takes it off Stephanie, and then it just kind of jumps about, I believe, from her to Ivory, and Ivory has a really good run before losing it to China WrestleMania 17. It is a really good, run of matches that's coming up, but for the minute, it's as if it doesn't exist. But that is going to do us for our No Way Out 2000 review here on Retro Review. I'm Ross McLeod. I'd like to thank Scott McLeod for joining me.
Thank you very much.
So, the next couple of retro reviews, we are going to have WrestleMania 2000 with Gary and Derek Kernahan joining me, Backlash 2000 with 2000 Kurt Angle lookalike David Hockney joining me, and the GOAT returns from hiding from Alexander Darwin McCallum to being back on the show. David Campbell is going to join me for, I believe it's Insurrection
2000.
Yes, and the goal here for Retro Review is to cover every pay-per-view of the 2000s. I don't mean the year 2000, I mean from Royal Rumble 2000 to TLC 2009. We are going to go the absolute distance with this and see how far we can take it. Or until I just don't want to. It's that sort of thing. Until I get bored and decide to do something else. It's Suplex Retweet on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify and all Android podcasting sites. Find us at Suplex Retweet on all social media sites, suplexretweet.com for all your links and reviews, previews, interviews in article form and YouTube form. Find us on YouTube and so much more. We have absolutely so much for you to enjoy here at Suplex Retweet. So all it remains is to say thank you to Scott.
Thank you very much.
And we'll hope you join us next time for WrestleMania 2000.